I'm sure I can introduce the people in the panel. On my extreme right is Mr. Godfrey Mwachi, who is the acting CEO of Strategic Fuel Fund. On my immediate right is Mbambo, who is the acting DG of Energy, because the DG is on official visit abroad. On my left is Mompati, who is the acting CEO of CEF. On his left is Makubela, Deputy Director General at Energy. And then lastly, Mr. Makanya, who is the CEO of CEF. Over the past couple of days, there have been a number of media reports about alleged irregularities in the department's cooperation with the South Sudan. These reports emanated from a sensational headline article that was published on the front page of the Sunday Times, dated the 24th of March 2019, titled, "Jeff's dodgy $1 billion oil deal, Minister Radebe's team splashes millions in pursuit of energy venture in South Sudan." In light of where we find ourselves as a country and the dire need to clean up our backyard as government, there's never been a better time for media to be playing its part in exposing any illicit behavior by public officials who are found wanting. For the record, I also applaud the process of other corruption-busting mechanisms set up by the former and current presidents, like the Zondo Commission, that have been set up to hold public officers to account. Sadly, however, emerging of late is the suspicious timing of various spurious allegations on the eve of these contested elections coming on the 8th of May. On the one hand, my superior logic says that this kind of political posturing and settling of scores should come as no surprise for a seasoned politician like myself, and perhaps I should take it on the chin. But the other part of my conscience says that the prejudicial selection of truth and fiction is unjust for South Africans who seek to only know and read the uncompromising truth. These allegations require emphatic response to set the record straight and dispel such false assertions. Contextual background. To assist with the context, it will be useful to firstly describe South Africa's relationship with South Sudan. Our relationship dates back to the time when the liberation movements of the African National Congress and the Sudanese People's Liberation Army were fighting for their liberation. The South African government has played a critical role in the liberation of South Sudan. In preparation for the new state of South Sudan, South Africa went to the extent of training many leaders and cadres of South Sudan for the new administration. This training was provided by the University of South Africa and coordinated by the Department of Public Service and Administration. While President Ramaphosa was still the Deputy President of our Republic, he played a central role to South Sudan's peace process, a role that is still being continued by the current Deputy President, David Mabuza. Our South African National Defence Force also continues to deploy troops in that country as part of the United Nations peace mission. The point I'm making here is that South Africa took a political position to support South Sudan in its social and economic development, long before I became the Minister of Energy. Contrary to the innuendos of the said newspaper article, this government-to-government cooperation has been years in the making and technically cast in stone, certainly not by my own doing. That will be giving me much too much credit. International Energy Agenda. For those who require a better understanding of the International Energy Agenda, it needs to be emphasized that international cooperation is an integral part of ensuring energy security. The energy portfolio has a number of agreements and memoranda of understanding which underpin this cooperation. An example of such agreements is the cooperation between ourselves and Mozambique, which amongst others facilitates trade in both gas and electricity between the two countries. Cooperation in infrastructure development forms a critical pillar of the African Union's Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. This informs our approach to investments in the continent, such as our current petroleum exploration operations in Ghana. In all my pronouncements, including those to Parliament, on the issue of high oil prices, I have been transparent on the department's engagement with my counterparts on the continent. And this is to bolster our department's engagement position with regards to access to crude oil, to ensure self-sufficiency, as well as to find ways of mitigating fuel price fluctuations in the long term. As recently as Tuesday, the 26th March 2019, I met the Minister of Energy of Botswana to explore areas of strategic cooperation between our two countries. Strategic rationale. So why has South Africa been talking to South Sudan? South Africa, as we all know, is a net importer of crude oil, and it has always been our strategy to source oil and gas for our domestic use, both internationally and where possible within our own territory. In all my pronouncements, including those to Parliament, on the issue of high oil prices, I have consistently indicated that I'm engaging with my counterparts on the African continent. This is to bolster our country's position with regards to access to crude oil and ensure self-sufficiency, as well as mitigating fuel price fluctuations in the long term. On 12 September 2018, when addressing the National Assembly, I indicated that taking into account the current reality of unproven reserves in our country, we needed to look at more prolific countries and invest in blocks producing crude oil, particularly on the African continent. I further stated that this will require financial resources. Exploration is quite a costly but necessary exercise. In September 2018, I specifically mentioned that I had begun a process of engaging my counterparts in Nigeria, South Sudan, and Equatorial Guinea as part of our intervention to mitigate future challenges. As government, we would want to get to a situation in which the prices of fuel compare favorable with those of oil-producing countries. The strategy, the strategy includes, the strategy also includes the facilitation of drilling of oil locally, which has led to the recent oil and gas find off the Mossel Gas Bay and shale gas potential in the Karoo. Our involvement in various parts of the continent, include South Sudan, is informed by this strategy. Just to give few facts, South Sudan is a significant oil producer with estimated reserves of 3.5 billion barrels of crude oil. It also has 3 trillion cubic feet of natural gas in its estimated reserves. The country's reserves are ranked third largest on the African continent after Nigeria and Angola. Just to illustrate the magnitude of the gas reserves, Petro SA gas to liquids refinery has over the past 20 years only used 1 TCF of gas. South Sudan is landlocked, and to get its oil to the market, it is dependent on a pipeline passing through Sudan and incurs significant logistical cost. It is envisaged that a joint investment project will assist South Sudan in finding an additional export route and in turn bring strategic oil reserves to other markets, including South Africa. Across South Africa. Towards the end of 2018, South Sudan invited South Africa to consider participation in the oil and gas sector in that country. If you familiarize yourselves with government processes, you will know that such participation can only be done through a government-to-government agreement. In the conclusion of the Memorandum of Understanding between our two countries, all the constitutional and legal processes undertaken have to involve the Department of International Relations and Cooperation and the Presidency. The presidential meeting minute empowering the Minister of Energy to sign the MOU on behalf of the South African government was duly authorized. Without this, an MOU can never be concluded. The joint investment project value chain starts from an exploration block to a pipeline, then to a new refinery, and finally to a new terminal. This will unlock the reserves of South Sudan to be self-sufficient, serve regional markets, and will bring value financially and strategically for South Africa and South Sudan. This is not only for South Sudan, but for the East African region, including Ethiopia, Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya, with Sudan creating a robust market that facilitates trade and other investment opportunities. Sequence of events leading to the article. Leading to the Sunday Times article, the journalist contacted the Director General of National Treasury, who explained to her how these matters are dealt with in government, and specifically how this matter had been raised with National Treasury by SAF and SFF officials. As quoted verbatim by the journalist herself, the DG of National Treasury had this to say, and I quote, "The National Treasury met with SFF and SAF at their request. They wanted to understand what they needed to do to meet the requirements of the Standard for Infrastructure Procurement and Delivery Management and the Public Finance Management Act. We agreed that once they complete the necessary work, including undertaking the feasibility study, they will come back to National Treasury for the necessary approvals." Close quote. Essentially, the National Treasury had been kept abreast on the developments of this project, while also seeking their advice on how infrastructure procurement will work when the need arises. Detailed analysis of the article. I wish to proceed and deal with the misrepresentation in the article. An energy expert would know that as a future potential and equity partner in the joint investment project, South Africa could potentially do the following with the Sudanese crude oil: swap it for any other suitable crudes, sell it into the open market, uplift, refine it, and bring finished products into the country. Project development and resourcing. The development of such a project requires key critical skills which are scarce on the continent, such as geologists, refinery specialists, process engineers, economists, financial modelers, petroleum industry experts, business analysts, investment and funding specialists. The members of the team of experts mentioned in the article are all SAF Group employees with a proven track record in delivering on complex projects. They are not an additional financial burden to the SAF Group. There are 6 experts assigned to South Sudan project and 12 to the Saudi Arabia refinery and petrochemical project, which are also all sourced from within the SAF Group. How a conclusion is reached that the Saudi Arabia project is not receiving adequate attention is an indication of the malicious intent of the so-called source. The CEO of the project has not been relieved of his current responsibilities as acting CEO of SAF-FF. His responsibilities in the project are therefore not an additional cost to the SAF Group. His primary responsibility on South Sudan project is to oversee the feasibility stage. The long-term plan is to ensure a transfer of skills and a sharing of key resources which will contribute to the development of both countries. Project approach. The project is still in the feasibility stage, where a number of assessments are still being made. Therefore, the project at this stage does not require any cabinet or national treasury approvals. Travel costs. On the travel cost of this project, it stands to reason that a project of this magnitude requires coordination between various divisions within the SAF Group and their counterparts on the South Sudanese side. Hence, traveling of experts from both sides is necessary for prudent and timely execution of the project. To date, the project has spent not more than 2.2 million rand, which includes personnel cost and travel. The basis of and source of the 20 million rand mentioned in the article is misleading. The hiring of an aeroplane to travel to Juba was due to a critical business need and was duly approved in line with Treasury regulations after consultation with National Treasury. Capital investment. The stated $1 billion investment is the estimated cost of the full project, including the oil block, pipeline, and refinery, which will be spread over a period of 10 years. A project of this magnitude passes through various stages of approval and execution. The amount mentioned is an indicative figure at this stage, and as with similar projects of this nature, upon completing the feasibility study, the project has a potential to attract other strategic partners, investors, which may include Sudanese and South African companies. Approval processes. The signing of the government-to-government agreement was widely publicized in November 2018, including a live broadcast by SABC. The project is now in the feasibility stage, which has been approved by the SFF board. The cost of the studies is well within the board's delegation of authority. It is therefore incorrect that the SFF board rejected the expenditure related to this project. The project has never been formally tabled before the SAF board for approval. It is therefore incorrect that SAF board rejected the project as alleged in the article. The allegation that the SAF board rejected the request of approval of $9 million is also not true, since this figure falls within the delegated levels of the SFF board, which does not require SAF board approval. International investments in South Sudan. The assertion that 2 foreign governments has done a similar feasibility study and found that the venture did not make sense is not corroborated by the levels of interest demonstrated by the activities of other countries in South Sudan. For an example, out of 5 members of BRICS countries, 3 major players in the petroleum sector, Russia, China, and India, are already in South Sudan. In addition, other multinational companies have made significant investments in the country. Other important countries in South Sudan are Malaysia, Nigeria, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia. Even some oil majors have actually shown interest to work with South Africa to unlock the potential of South Sudan. It is international best practice in the oil exploration and production industry, especially in countries that have a high demand which cannot be met by domestic production, to have equity interest in oil producing blocks outside of their countries. South Korea and one of India's state-owned companies have stakes in oil and gas projects in different oil-producing countries. This project, when fully executed, will bring similar value to South Africa. Non-factual information and faceless sources. Let me also take this opportunity to address the issue of the removal of Mr. Luvo Makasi as the chairperson and a member of the SAF board, as it has already been reported in the media. Mr. Makasi was removed in his role following serious allegations relating to corruption that were brought to my attention. Mr. Makasi was given an opportunity to make representations to me relating to these allegations. The representations were not sufficiently persuasive given the information that had been presented to me. As the Minister of Energy, I took decisive action to deal with this matter by reporting the alleged corrupt activity to the law enforcement agencies, as I'm duty bound to do so in terms of the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act. In future, I will not hesitate to take similar decisions should any office bearers place themselves in similar situations. In dealing decisively with the corruption allegations before me, this kind of misleading information being peddled smacks of an attempt to derail the clean-up process being undertaken by government and provides a divergent distraction to the task at hand. I will not be deterred in doing everything in my power to bring to book those allegedly involved in corruption at SAF. The SAF board has told me, have also distanced themselves from the grossly misleading information that the media alleges to have been supplied by the board and other so-called insiders. We believe the information is malicious and is intended to distract us from what is important and also to sour our relations with our Sudanese counterparts. A case in point is an allegation relating to the SFF board meeting last week to ratify an expenditure ex post facto. No SFF board meeting was scheduled for last week and none took place. I would like to thank everyone who's here today and assure you that the Department of Energy and its entities are open to honest and transparent engagements on these and other energy matters. In the next couple of days and weeks, we will be engaging further on our broader energy plans and key initiatives. This is important in ensuring that we take the country along with us as we continue to deliver on our government's broader national energy imperatives. I thank you.
Minister, thank you very much for the comprehensive unpacking and explanation of the whole issue of South Sudan. I think it was quite comprehensive and bringing facts to home. Thank you very much for that, Minister. May I start by getting an indication if there are any questions that the colleagues here in Pretoria first would want to pose to the Minister? Show by any show of hands. Thank you very much. I'll recognize you. And start by introducing yourself and then get on with your question.
Thank you very much. My name is Muluku Mloto from ENCA. Minister, in terms of the costs, are we likely to see them increasing as this project continues? But also, where are we going to get this money from? Some people would also want to know how this will benefit South Africans in particular. And the Democratic Alliance, for instance, has said that they are going to demand that you make the Memorandum of Understanding publicly. Are you willing to do that? Finally, what are the specific allegations that the chairperson of the board is facing? Specifically, what is he alleged to have done?
Thank you, Muluku. Let me first also check Cape Town if we might have a question. Giselle, Cape Town.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Baloyi. We've got 4. Go ahead, we'll start at the end over there, then Paul, Wendell, then Linda.
Hi, Paul Burkhardt with Bloomberg News. Minister, I think one of the issues that's developed into why we're here today is the expediency and the availability of communication sometimes with the Department of Energy is quite difficult. It's hard to get answers to some of our questions, and that may, if there's more information available, that may help the matter. Also, initially this deal had very few details. Why wasn't there more of a scope presented initially that gave people an idea of how exactly this would work and where the money would go? And also, South Sudan is in a stage of very fragile peace. Is this really the best place for South Africa's investment when it's trying to draw investment itself? Thank you.
Good morning, Minister. Paul Vicchiato, also from Bloomberg News. The CF has quite a large cash reserve at the moment. Are you going to earmark any of those funds for this project? And then could you give us an idea of if you're thinking of this project being a joint venture with some other international players or purely a South African project? Yeah, those two. Thank you.
Wendell from Reuters. A couple of questions, please, Minister. You seem to suggest that the 1 billion also gives space for South Africa to get an equity stake in an oil block, a producing oil block. Could you give me an indication of what oil block this is in South Sudan and what the equity stake is, please? Is it 25% or 35%? Again, the questions that 2 of my colleagues have raised is the question of who's going to pay for this. CEF in a presentation to Parliament recently indicated that their books aren't the best at the moment, even though they have turned a profit vis-a-vis last year. Where's the money going to be coming from? Is it going to be funded off CEF's books, its balance sheet? Given the fact that 3 years ago there was a 1 billion investment which didn't go down very well. Petro SA is the cash cow. There is the money going to come from Petro SA. And the third thing relates to, you suggest that part of this deal will see us lifting oil and possibly refining it. My understanding from experts are that the South Sudanese crude is not compatible with the local refineries. So I mean that then automatically exclude that oil uplifting and bringing it here. CEF has a trading and buying team already. Are you duplicating matters then? They already in the international market buying and selling SFF via CEF. So I mean, why there? And then again, why South Sudan? Why not Mozambique, where there's also a proposal for a new refinery. Thanks.
Yes, Minister. The article appeared in Sunday Times. Linda Ensor from Business Day, sorry. The article appeared in the Sunday Times. It's now Thursday. Why has it taken so long for you to respond, and was this matter discussed at the Cabinet meeting yesterday? Thank you. And if it was discussed, what was Cabinet's response? Thanks.
Giselle, we are done with Cape
That's
Town.
all from Cape Town for now.
Oh, thank you
Yes,
very
that's
much.
correct.
And thank you very much, colleagues from Cape Town, for your questions. The Minister is not alone. He's accompanied by a team that he has introduced. So we'll then give over to the Minister to take some of the questions. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you. Question from ENCA. Let me start with the former chairperson. I have nothing to add to the statement that I've made, that the matter is before law enforcement agencies. The allegations were placed before Mr. Makasi, and as I've just stated, his representations were not persuasive to me. That's why I proceeded to remove him as the chair and director of the SAF board. And I also proceeded to report the matter to law enforcement agencies, and all those who are also familiar with the process did so. On the issue of where the money is coming from, the SAF and SFA people will respond to those. I'm not aware that the DA is looking for the memorandum of understanding, but as you know, MOUs of this nature needs to be submitted to Parliament, which I have done so. So if you want a copy of the MOU, because parliamentary documents are public documents, I can give you my copy, ENCA, there it is. On the issue of Cape Town, Bloomberg, thanks for your comment. We'll try to make ourselves even more available to answer your questions. There have not been few details on this matter of South Sudan. I had a public signing ceremony in Juba, where, as I've just indicated, SABC was present and some portions of it were broadcast live, and it was reported widely even in South African newspapers. Yesterday, yes, Cabinet was apprised of this matter. That is why I'm before you addressing this matter. On the issue of South Sudan, the impression is created that because there is strife in South Sudan, then no one must invest in that country. As I've just demonstrated, many countries are in South Sudan. Many oil companies are there in South Sudan. As we speak, oil is flowing from South Sudan via Sudan into the international markets. We as a country, South Africa, we're part of the process, as I was saying, of the liberation of the people of South Sudan. We were there when they were creating a new state. We supported them in terms of training of their leaders and their cadres. We are the last people who must walk away from such a brotherly and sisterly country. We are working with them. They approached us as a South African government at a very high level between our presidents. That is why we are deeply committed. That is why our women and men of the Defense Force are still there in the trenches to ensure that there is peace process. So to suggest that our country that has been very pivotal in the creation of a new state of South Sudan should walk away, to us, it appears that there are other vested interests of some people that only South Africa must not be involved in South Sudan. And lastly, SAF group of companies are there to ensure that there is security of oil and gas supply in South Africa. We do not have enough oil resources. The fuel price increases all the time. So when a government and its entities tries to solve that problem, some people want us to stop. But let me get to the experts to respond to this issue of the cost and other issues. who want to start? Godfrey.
Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Godfrey Moahi. I'm the CEO of Central at SFF, Strategic Fuel Fund. On the issue of costs, will the cost increase? As we said initially, we are at a feasibility study stage on this project. And as we continue to study, we've got a budget, and those costs will be incurred as we continue. At the end of the feasibility study, you will then have enough data to put together the business case. And that business case, if the project is viable, anyone can invest in that in the project. How does it benefit South Africa? I think if we understand how the oil market works, I mean, the oil market by its nature is global market. I don't believe that there are a lot of refineries who are feeding their own refineries with their own oil. It's imported, and as the minister said earlier on, we've got options around this. We can take the South Sudanese crude, if it does not feed our refinery, and swap it with someone who's got the grades that we need. We can trade it into the open market, or we can actually refine it in the refineries where they've got compatible crude and bring finished products. As you might be aware, this country imports almost a third of their requirements from the international market. Is South Sudan the best place? I think the minister spoke about the Agenda 2063 for Africa. But colleagues who have been in this sector for a while will remember that when exploration started in Angola, people were asking the same question, is Angola the best place? Our belief is South Sudan is the best place. They have signed a peace process, and we believe that we also have got a first move advantage in going to South Sudan. Are we going to have partners? Yes. I mean, I think by nature of this project, you have partners. And you will remember that Total recently announced the find in South Africa, on South African shores. And actually, Total is not alone. It's working with partners. That's the nature of this project. You know, they are big, and we can't take exposure. And therefore, the answer is yes. We will, after feasibility, have to look at partners who can work with us. I think I'll stop there, Minister, unless I've missed any other question. Colleagues?
Thank you very much. Colleagues, any last bite on the issue? Let me start first with Pretoria. Yeah, I'll come to Cape Town. You'll introduce yourself. Noted. Recognized. Noted.
Good morning. My name is Chris Yelland from EE Publishers. Minister Radebe, would you be okay to answer some related questions not directly involved in this particular project, other related issues in the energy sector that are very pressing? Okay. Well, if I may then pose a few questions. Minister, a lot of messaging coming from the ministry is somewhat confusing to observers in the industry and to people actively involved. So I was hoping you could give some clarity on the following issues. Firstly, the integrated resource plan for electricity is going to be discussed tomorrow at NEDLAC. You had earlier indicated that it would be promulgated by the end of March. Does this mean that the NEDLAC process will still proceed, or is it possible that you may dispense with the NEDLAC process and proceed immediately to the policy adjustment and gazetting stage? And is there any timeline you can provide any updated timeline you can provide for the IRP? Secondly, if I may query the status of the small-scale embedded generation regulations, which to my understanding have not been gazetted yet and are awaiting concurrence by NERSA before gazetting by the Department of Energy. On the other hand, you signed these regulations apparently last year, 6 months ago. What is the hold-up, and when can we expect concurrence by NERSA through a public process and promulgation? Lastly, Minister, there was recently an advertisement placed for a new head of the IPP office of the Department of Energy. Is there anything that we should be reading into this advertising for the replacement of the current head? Does the current head enjoy your support as head of IPP office? Is this a routine replacement? And what does it mean, this replacement? And lastly, if I may just sneak in another question. We are receiving reports that the chairman and CEO of NERSA are being subject to investigation and questioning about their roles and are possibly facing suspension. You've alluded to Mr. Luba Makasi's suspension. Is there anything we need to read into these reports about investigations into the activities of the chairman and CEO of NERSA? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. I think you'd also agree with me that when we convened this press briefing was to get the whole issue about this South Sudan. But however, given that the energy section has different legs on it, that's why maybe some of the questions are there, but we'll give over to the Minister for guidance. But before maybe we go to that, let's take your last bite, Chief.
Thank you, Mulu Kumloto, again from ENCA. Minister, you said we are still at the feasibility study. Are there timelines? When are you likely to finish, and when are we likely to see commencement of the project? But also the 2.2 million rand that you say was spent so far, do you anticipate this money will go up? The other question relates to the sale, controversial sale of the oil reserves. I understand that an investigation got underway. Bring us up to speed. What has happened so far?
Minister? Yes. I think from Pretoria we're done. Minister will respond, and then we'll take just the last bite from Cape Town, and there will be closed, Minister. Okay. Thank you very much. Cape Town, the last bite before we release the Minister.
Yeah. So the two of the questions weren't answered in the first round, please. The first related to the equity stake that is that will accrue to South Africa in the oil block. Which oil block is this, or which oil block has been identified that South Africa will get stake in? Is it, let's say, 25% in 3A, whatever basin, so something like that, please? And then the second question, which a few of the colleagues asked and hasn't been answered: will CEF pay the 1 billion from its books, or where's the money going to come from? Is it going to come from the contingency reserve, or is this something that CEF is comfortable paying with off its own balance sheet? Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you done in Cape Town, colleagues?
Yes, we are. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thanks for your participation. Minister?
Thank you. The issue, let me just start. When you read the Memorandum of Understanding, which I'm going to give you, it will indicate to you that this is a government-to-government Memorandum of Understanding, where we've set up committees at a ministerial level as well as at officials level, in particular our two entities, the National Oil Company of South Sudan and ours here in South Africa. It will be on the basis of the conclusion of that feasibility study, as Godfrey was saying, that we will know how South Sudan and South Africa divide the equity there and what kind of partners or investors will be required, as Godfrey has said, after a business case has been established. So we cannot be able to state right now what will be the equity stake at this moment in time. Godfrey has already alluded to how this project financially will be able to unfold. So it will be premature to say how will it be funded. Back to Pretoria. I will answer two of your questions. On the IRP, the NETLEC process is unfolding, and I do know that tomorrow there is a meeting of the NETLEC Energy Committee, after which it will be presented to the NETLEC executive. Just a brief background on the issue of the NETLEC process. At the beginning of September 2018, I presented the draft IRP to NETLEC before we send it for public comments and participation. After I've received all comments, I went back to NETLEC on the 5th of March to give them an update of what has happened and some of the silent features of the comments that stakeholders are making. It is the intention of government to ensure that as soon as that process of NETLEC is completed, that government will be able to proceed with the IRP. I'll also answer the second question. Does the current head of the IPP office enjoy my confidence? Absolutely, 100%. That is why Karen is continuing to be the head of the IPP office. What is happening, as you know, that there is a tripartite arrangement, National Treasury, Energy, as well as DPSA. We're at a process where we need to find a permanent home of the IPP in terms of a new entity. That is the process that is unfolding. I hope I've answered your question. On the issue of the strategic sale, or others call it rotation, that process, firstly, is before courts, and secondly, there has been an investigation that SFF has initiated. They've given me a preliminary report last year, and I do understand they're finalizing that report so that whoever is found on the wrong side of the law must take its course. So, but they are here, they can explain for themselves, but that's how it has been reported to me thus far.
Thank you, Minister. Maybe, yes.
Thank you very much. Just the last question around the timeline for the feasibility. In our plan for the feasibility to be completed by the end of the financial year 2019-2020. I think we just need to realize that there are buckets of projects. You know, there is an oil block, there is a refinery, there is a pipeline, there is a terminal. And each one of those will be completed at a different stage. But they're all within the 2019-2020 financial year to be completed. Thank you very much, Minister.
I think we should have added as well that the team from South Sudan is coming to South Africa next week as part of this process of engagement.
Minister and the panel, thank you very much for the time. Minister, also a special thank for extending your stay beyond the time that we agreed on, and we thank you very much for that. Colleagues, we have Tandiwe from Energy for any other questions that are related to Energy, you'll send them. We have also Mabatu from the Office of the Minister, if there is any other thing that we have to do. And thank you very much. Thank you, Minister.